The Council's answer came exactly 48 hours later, delivered not in words but in weapons fire. Captain Kim Dae-hyun watched from the bridge of the Soul's Pride as every Council fleet in the galaxy opened fire simultaneously. The response was exactly what humanity had expected. When faced with exposure of their crimes, the Council chose to double down rather than surrender. All ships commence defensive operations. Admiral Lee's voice echoed across the human fleet. Remember, we're not here to destroy. We're here to end this war before it truly begins. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. As Council weapons struck human ships, something impossible happened. The ships got stronger. Engineer Song Yura's adaptive technology absorbed each attack, analyzed it, and instantly developed countermeasures. Hull plating that had been damaged by Vorthak energy cannons became immune to that exact frequency. Shields that had been penetrated by Nexari plasma beams adapted to deflect them perfectly. "Sir," Kim's tactical officer reported, "the enemy weapons are becoming less effective with each shot." Kim smiled grimly. "Then let's give them more opportunities to learn." The Soul's Pride dove into the heart of the Vorthak fleet surrounding their homeworld. Council ships that had seemed invincible for millennia found their weapons useless against an enemy that evolved in real time. Every shot they fired made the human ships harder to kill, but the real shock came when the Council tried their ultimate weapon. On the fortress world of Thalmaxis, deep in Council space, an ancient device began powering up. It was older than recorded history, a weapon capable of sterilizing entire galactic regions. The Council had built it millions of years ago to deal with threats they couldn't defeat conventionally. Marshal Park Jung-ho, commanding the human forces, from his flagship in dimensional space, watched the weapon charge with interest rather than fear. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the Council is activating some kind of superweapon. Energy readings are off the charts." "I see it," Park replied, calmly. "Dr. Nam, are you ready?" "Dimensional absorption fields are active," came the reply from Dr. Nam Yoonji, now serving as Chief Technology Officer for the human fleet. "Let them fire." The weapon fired, sending a wave of destructive energy toward the former human homeworld of Earth. It was a beam capable of destroying not just planets but entire star systems, sterilizing space itself so that nothing could ever live there again. The beam struck Earth's location and simply vanished. Dr. Nam's dimensional technology didn't just absorb the attack, it redirected it through dimensional space, sending the energy harmlessly into empty areas between galaxies. The Council's ultimate weapon had been neutralized as easily as swatting away an insect. "Council Command," Marshal Park's voice echoed across their communication networks. "Your superweapon has been disabled. We have absorbed and redirected its energy. Any further use of galaxy-killing weapons will result in their immediate neutralization." On Vorthak Prime, Councilor Vexthul stared at his screens in disbelief. The weapon that had guaranteed Council dominance for millions of years had been casually defeated by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive parasites. "Sir," his aide whispered, "our fleets are reporting massive casualties. The human ships they're not losing any vessels. Our weapons can't hurt them anymore." Around the galaxy, the same story was playing out. Council fleets that had seemed unstoppable were being systematically dismantled by human forces that grew stronger with each passing moment. It wasn't just the adaptive technology, it was the way humans fought. Council species had been using the same tactics for thousands of years. Their battle plans were predictable, their strategies ancient and unchanging. Human commanders, trained in warfare that evolved constantly, could predict their enemies' moves before they made them. Captain Oh Hyun-woo, flying his enhanced fighter Taeguk through a swarm of Nexari interceptors, demonstrated the difference perfectly. His consciousness was linked directly to his ship's computer, allowing him to react at speeds no purely biological pilot could match. The Nexari ships, piloted by beings with reaction times limited by their ancient biology, might as well have been standing still. "This isn't a battle," he reported to his squadron. "It's a demonstration." Within 6 hours of the fighting beginning, Half the council fleet was destroyed or disabled. The other half was trying to retreat, but human ships appeared wherever they tried to run. The dimensional fold technology that had hidden humanity for a year now allowed them to be everywhere at once. On Nexus Prime, the great council chamber where humanity had been humiliated a year earlier was now filled with panicking delegates. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were discovering what it felt like to be powerless. "We must surrender," Ambassador Thys of the Quilarian said, her feathers ruffled with terror. "The humans have proven their point." "Surrender to primitives?" Representative Kilanth of the Nexari snarled, though his blue skin was pale with fear. "The council does not bow to upstarts." "Then the council will die," said a new voice. Every delegate turned to see President Kim So-hee walking into the chamber, flanked by human guards. The leader of Earth's new government had appeared in the most secure location in council space as easily as walking through a door. "How did you get here?" Vexthul demanded, rising from his seat. "The same way our ships got here," President Kim replied calmly. "We go where we choose to go, when we choose to go there. Your security, like your military, is based on old assumptions about how space works." She walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where Ambassador Choi had been humiliated a year earlier. But this time, the human speaker commanded absolute attention. "The war is over," she announced. "Your fleets are destroyed, your weapons are useless, and your greatest secrets have been revealed to the galaxy. You have lost completely." "What do you want?" Vexthul asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Justice," President Kim replied. "And change." Over the following days, the true scope of humanity's victory became clear. The Council's military had been completely defeated without the loss of a single human ship. Their political authority had collapsed as species throughout the galaxy learned the truth about millions of years of genocide, and their technological superiority had been revealed as an illusion maintained by preventing others from advancing. Dr. An Hyejin, working from the new capital in dimensional space, began the most ambitious project in galactic history. Using DNA samples and cultural data that humanity had secretly collected over their decades of council membership, she started the process of restoring the 47 extinct civilizations. "How is it possible?" asked a Quilarian scientist who was observing the work. "Human biotechnology," Dr. An explained patiently. "We learned genetics from the Nexari, cellular manipulation from the ethereals, and consciousness transfer from the Vorthak. Then we improved all of it. The first restored species was the Mordani, whose archaeological sites had provided crucial evidence of council crimes. When the first Mordani in 3,000 years opened their eyes in Dr. An's laboratory, they spoke a single word: free. Within months, dozens of species that had been wiped from existence were walking among the stars again. The galaxy was no longer dominated by a handful of ancient empires. Instead, hundreds of civilizations were working together, sharing knowledge and exploring possibilities that the Council had forbidden for millions of years. 5 years after humanity's withdrawal from the Council, Captain Kim Dae-hyun stood on the observation deck of his retirement home, a small station floating in a pocket dimension that Dr. Nam had created especially for veterans. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species working together to build the largest exploration fleet in galactic history. The galaxy had changed completely. The old Council worlds now served as museums and memorials to the victims of their crimes. New civilizations rose every day as species that had been suppressed for millennia finally had the freedom to grow and explore. And at the center of it all, humanity served not as rulers but as teachers, sharing the knowledge and technology that had made their victory possible. "Beautiful sight, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. Kim turned to see Ambassador Choi approaching. Now serving as humanity's representative to the new galactic cooperative, she had aged in the 5 years since their withdrawal from the old council, but her eyes held a satisfaction that had been missing during their decades of humiliation. "Hard to believe how far we've come," Kim replied. "Is it?" Choi smiled. "We always had the potential. We just needed the freedom to use it." Through the window, They watched as a fleet of exploration ships prepared to depart for the galaxy's edge. The crews were mixed. Humans working alongside Mordani, Quillarians, restored Zephyrians, and dozens of other species. They were heading for regions of space that the old council had declared forbidden, ready to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of known civilization. "Where do you think they'll go?" Kim asked. "Everywhere," Choi replied. "The universe is vast and we're just getting started." Behind them, the communications board chimed with a message from the exploration fleet. Their leader, a young human, named Commander Jin Soo-young, appeared on the screen with a broad smile. "Final checks complete," she reported. 1 year after humanity's disappearance, the galaxy was falling apart. Dr. Kang Tae-hyun brushed dirt from an ancient stone tablet, his hands shaking slightly as he read the symbols carved into its surface. The archaeological site on Kepler 442b had once been a thriving city, home to a species called the Mordani. According to council records, they had chosen isolation 3,000 years ago. The official story claimed they had decided galactic civilization was too stressful and had moved to a distant part of the galaxy. The tablet told a different story. "Dr. Park," he called to his colleague, who was examining similar artifacts nearby. "You need to see this." Dr. Park Minji, now serving as chief science advisor to humanity's new government, walked over to examine Kang's discovery. Her face grew pale as she read the ancient text. "They knew," she whispered. "The Mordani knew what was coming." The tablet described the final days of Mordani civilization. They had been innovating rapidly, developing new technologies that the council found threatening. First came the restrictions on their research, then the limits on their expansion. Finally, the ultimatum: submit to complete council control or face remedial action. The Mordani had chosen to fight. The tablet ended abruptly in the middle of a sentence. "How many sites have we found now?" Park asked. 17, Kang replied. "Every single one tells the same story. Species that got too advanced, too independent, too threatening to the established order. And every single one ended the same way. They were working in humanity's new capital, a massive dimensional station that existed in a pocket of space parallel to the normal galaxy. Around them, the greatest archaeological effort in human history was uncovering the truth about the Galactic Council's past. What they were finding was changing everything. The ethereal collective wasn't always energy beings," Park said, pulling up holographic displays of their research. 3 million years ago, they were physical creatures not that different from humans, but look at this. The hologram showed evolutionary charts and genetic analyses. The ethereals hadn't evolved naturally into energy beings. They had been transformed, forcibly converted from biological to energy-based life, as punishment for developing technology that threatened an even older council. "They were rebels once," Kang said, understanding immediately. "The council destroyed their physical forms and turned them into living warnings. That's why they never oppose council decisions now." "It gets worse," Park continued. "We've found evidence of 47 extinct civilizations, just like Director Yoon's intelligence teams discovered. But there were others before that. The council has been doing this for millions of years." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Lim Gina was conducting the most dangerous mission in human history. Using humanity's unique neural adaptability, she had infiltrated the core worlds of the ethereal collective by learning to mimic their energy patterns. It should have been impossible. No organic being had ever successfully disguised themselves as an ethereal. But human brains were different. Where other species had fixed neural patterns, humans could reshape their consciousness to match almost any form. Floating through the energy fields that served as ethereal cities, Lim listened to conversations that had been hidden from organic ears for millennia. What she heard made her want to scream. The ethereals remembered everything. Every species that had been destroyed, every civilization that had been relocated, every act of genocide committed in the name of galactic stability. They remembered because they had been forced to watch, trapped in their energy forms and unable to intervene. "The human question will be resolved soon," she heard one ethereal say to another. The biological cleansing protocols have been prepared. All 47 former human worlds will be sterilized simultaneously, replied the other. Not even bacteria will survive. The Council wants to ensure that humanity can never return to normal space. Lim felt her disguised energy form flicker with shock. The Council wasn't just planning to find and destroy humanity's new home. They were planning to make human space completely uninhabitable, turning dozens of worlds into dead rocks that could never support life again. When? She managed to ask, her voice mimicking the harmonic frequencies of ethereal communication. 3 cycles hence. The operation has been designated Final Solution by Military Commander Vexthul. Lim had heard enough. She began the complex process of withdrawing from the ethereal network, carefully hiding her retreat. The information she had gathered would change everything about humanity's plans. Back in human space, Admiral Baek So-young received Lim's report with grim satisfaction. She had been preparing for this moment for months, building the largest fleet in human history in the dimensional pockets that Dr. Nam had created. "How long do we have?" she asked Admiral Lee Hyunjin, who served as Supreme Commander of all human forces. 3 days until the Council begins their sterilization operation, Lee replied. But that doesn't matter anymore. It's time to show them what humanity has become. Lee activated the communication system that connected all dimensional stations throughout the galaxy. On screens across human space, his face appeared before millions of people who had spent the past year preparing for this moment. "Citizens of Earth," he began. "The time for hiding is over. The Galactic Council has revealed their true nature. They are not peacekeepers. They are exterminators, and they have been destroying advanced civilizations for millions of years. Today, we make our choice. We can remain hidden and safe, or we can ensure that no other species suffers the fate that was planned for us." Throughout the dimensional networks, massive gates began to open. For the first time in a year, human ships emerged into normal space, but they didn't appear where the Council expected them. Instead, they materialized directly in the orbital space, around every major Council world simultaneously. On Vorthak Prime, Counselor Vexthul was reviewing the final preparations for the sterilization operation when alarms began screaming throughout the capital city. He rushed to the command center where his staff stood frozen in shock. "Sir," his aide stammered, "there are human ships in orbit. Hundreds of them. They just appeared." Vexthul looked at the tactical displays and felt his scales turn cold. The ships surrounding his homeworld were unlike anything in Council records. They were sleek, powerful, and completely undetectable until they had chosen to reveal themselves. "How did they get past our defenses?" he demanded. "Sir, they didn't get past our defenses. They appeared inside our defensive perimeter. Our sensors show no signs of how they arrived." Similar scenes were playing out on every major Council world. On Nexus Prime, the Nexari leadership watched human ships materialize around their space stations. On the Ethereal Collective's core worlds, energy beings found themselves surrounded by vessels that shouldn't have been able to exist in their dimension. But the most shocking appearance was at Nexus Prime itself, where the Council chambers were located. A single human ship, larger and more advanced than any other, appeared directly above the great station where the galaxy's leaders met. From that ship, Admiral Lee's voice echoed throughout Council space, broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language, heard by every species in the galaxy. "Leaders of the Galactic Council." His voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its confidence. "Humanity has learned the truth about your peaceful civilization. We know about the 47 species you have destroyed. We know about the millions of years of genocide you have hidden behind lies about stability and order." On screens throughout the galaxy, evidence began appearing. Archaeological data, intercepted communications, testimonies from ethereal witnesses who had been forced to watch in silence. The entire bloody history of Council rule was laid bare for every species to see. "The Galactic Council has 48 hours to dissolve itself and surrender for crimes against sapient life," Lee continued. "Humanity offers one chance for redemption. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, but the human ships remained. They didn't attack, didn't threaten, didn't demand immediate surrender. They simply waited, their presence a silent reminder that humanity was no longer the weak species that had been dismissed from the council chamber. On Vortek Prime, Vexthul stared at the tactical displays with growing horror. The human ships weren't just surrounding his world. They were in perfect position to destroy every military installation, every government building, every important target on the planet, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. For the first time in his 1,000-year life, the most powerful military commander in the galaxy felt truly afraid. The humans hadn't just returned. They had evolved into something that made council power look like a child's toy. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had spent a year in exile learning, growing, and preparing. Now they were back, and the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The council had 48 hours to decide: surrender and face justice, or fight and face extinction. Either way, the age of council dominance was over. The call came at dawn on Vorthak Prime, waking Councillor Vexthul from his regeneration cycle. The aide who brought the message was trembling, which told him everything he needed to know before he even read the report. "Sir," the young Vorthak stammered, "the Sol System inspection team has returned. They report that Earth is empty." Vexthul's yellow eyes focused sharply on the aide. "Empty how? Destroyed? Evacuated?" "Just empty, sir. No signs of battle, no debris, no bodies. The cities are intact but completely abandoned. All the orbital stations are powered down but undamaged. It's like the entire human species just left." Vexthul took the datapad and reviewed the report himself. The inspection team had been thorough. They had scanned every continent, every ocean, every structure on Earth. Advanced sensors had detected no life signs above the level of basic animals and plants. The human homeworld, which had housed over 12 billion people just 6 months ago, now contained 0 human inhabitants. "What about the colonies?" he asked. "All empty, sir. 47 human settlements, all abandoned in the same way. No signs of struggle, no explanation of where they went." Vexthul felt something cold settle in his stomach. In his 1,000 years of life, he had seen many species fall before council authority. Some fought and were destroyed. Others submitted and were relocated. But none had ever simply vanished. "Call an emergency council session," he ordered. "This changes everything." 2 hours later, the great chamber on Nexus Prime filled with alien dignitaries, all talking at once in a dozen different languages. The mood was different from the usual council meetings. Instead of the calm confidence that usually marked these gatherings, there was an undercurrent of fear. "Order!" Vexthul called, using his position as military commander to take control of the session. "We face an unprecedented situation. The human species appears to have vanished from known space." A ripple of whispers went through the chamber. Representative Kylanth of the Nexari delegation raised a blue-skinned hand. "Surely they have simply relocated to some distant system. Our scouts will find them eventually." "We have already begun searching," Vexthul replied. "Every system within 500 light-years of human space has been scanned. We have found no trace of human presence anywhere." An ethereal collective speaker drifted forward, its energy form crackling with concern. "The dimensional anomalies we detected months ago. Could they be connected to this disappearance?" Vexthul had been wondering the same thing. The ethereals, being energy beings themselves, were sensitive to disturbances in spacetime that other species couldn't detect. They had reported strange readings throughout the galaxy, but no one had been able to identify the source. "We will investigate all possibilities," Vexthul said. "But our immediate concern must be security. A species capable of vanishing without a trace represents a threat to galactic stability." From the back of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. Ambassador Thys of the Quilarian Federation, one of the minor species that rarely participated in council debates, stepped forward on her 4 delicate legs. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "the humans are not a threat. Perhaps they simply wanted to be left alone." The chamber fell silent. Several of the major species delegates turned to stare at the small, bird-like creature who had dared to speak. Counselor Thys, Vexthul said slowly, are you suggesting that the Council was wrong to limit human expansion? Thys's feathers ruffled nervously, but she held her ground. I am suggesting that a species capable of disappearing so completely might have had good reasons for doing so. Murmurs of dissent rippled through the chamber. Representative Kylanth of the Nexari stood up, his large head gleaming under the chamber lights. The Quillarians speak from inexperience, he said dismissively. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 5 millennia. We do not make mistakes in our assessment of dangerous species. Then where are the humans? Thys asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. None of the senior council members had an answer. Vexthul decided to take control before the debate could continue. The Council will mobilize all available resources to locate the human population. This disappearance will be investigated as a matter of highest priority. Until we understand what has happened, all species are advised to increase security measures. As the session dissolved into smaller groups of worried delegates, Vexthul retreated to his private chambers. The truth was worse than he had told the Council. The humans hadn't just vanished from their own space. They had vanished from everywhere. Human traders, diplomats, students, and workers who had been living on alien worlds had all disappeared on the same day. It was as if someone had thrown a switch and made every human in the galaxy simply cease to exist. But Vexthul knew that was impossible. The humans were somewhere, and when he found them, he would make them pay for this embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the dimensional pocket that held humanity's new capital, General Ryu Minho was reviewing intelligence reports from Captain Oh Hyunwoo's reconnaissance missions. The young pilot had been flying stealth runs through Council space for weeks, gathering information on their response to humanity's disappearance. The Council is panicking, Oh reported, settling into a chair across from the General's desk. They've deployed scout fleets to over 1,000 systems. They're scanning everything, questioning every species they encounter, and finding nothing. Good, Ryu said. Fear makes them sloppy. What about their military preparations? That's where it gets interesting. Vexthul has been quietly mobilizing the largest fleet in Council history. He's calling it a search and rescue operation, but the ships are all armed for war. Ryu wasn't surprised. The Council had maintained their power through overwhelming force for thousands of years. When faced with something they couldn't understand, their first instinct was to destroy it. Engineer Song's weapons are ready for field testing, Ryu continued. Her adaptive systems have exceeded all expectations. Oh leaned forward with interest. Adaptive how? They learn during combat. The more an enemy shoots at them, the better. They get at deflecting those shots. The longer a battle lasts, the stronger our ships become. It was a uniquely human approach to warfare. Other species built their weapons to specific standards and left them unchanged for centuries. Human weapons evolved in real time, becoming more effective with each engagement. There's something else, O said. My reconnaissance flights have picked up chatter about other species asking questions. Some of the minor council members are starting to wonder if the humans were treated fairly. Which species? The Quillarians have been the most vocal, but others are listening. The Jelkar, the Fenturi, even some of the Nexari colonies are asking why the humans needed to be contained. In the first place, Rue smiled grimly. That was exactly what they had hoped for. The Council's power depended on all member species believing that the system was fair and just. If smaller species started questioning that belief, cracks would begin to appear in the Council's foundation. Continue the reconnaissance missions, Ryu ordered, but start the next phase as well. I want Council supply lines monitored for vulnerabilities. Are we moving to active operations? Not yet. But when we do, I want to hit them where it hurts most. Their confidence. After O left, Ryu walked to the observation deck of the dimensional station. Through the transparent walls, he could see dozens of human ships moving through space that existed alongside the normal galaxy, but remained completely invisible to Council sensors. The ships were beautiful in their deadly efficiency. Each one combined the best technology from multiple species, improved by human engineering and adapted for human crews. They were faster than Vorthak dreadnoughts, more maneuverable than Nexari interceptors, and more powerful than anything the Ethereal Collective had ever built. But their greatest advantage wasn't technological. It was strategic. The Council was searching for an enemy they could see and fight. They were preparing for a war against ships and planets and armies. They had no idea they were about to face an enemy that could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish before retaliation was possible. They were hunting for a conventional threat while humanity prepared to wage a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Soon, very soon, the Council would learn what it meant to fight an enemy that could adapt faster than they could respond. They would discover the true meaning of fear when they realized that nowhere in the galaxy was safe from human reach. The hunt was about to begin. But the Council had made one crucial mistake in their planning. They thought they were the hunters. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Choi walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. In that time, something strange had begun happening across human space. Trade ships that visited human colonies found empty stations and silent worlds. Communications to Earth went unanswered. The busy shipping lanes that once carried human goods throughout the galaxy were now dark and empty. Director Yoon Ji-won stood in her office deep beneath the surface of Luna, watching reports flow across her screens. The office didn't officially exist, just like the organization she ran. For 20 years, Earth's intelligence division had been the galaxy's best-kept secret. While diplomats talked and generals planned, Yoon's people had been doing what humans did best: learning, adapting, and preparing. "Report," she said to the young officer who had just entered her office. "The last civilian transport left the Kepler colony this morning," Captain Han Seo-jun replied. "That makes all outer colonies clear. The core worlds will be finished by next week." Yoon nodded. The evacuation had taken months of planning, but it was working perfectly. To any outside observer, it looked like humanity was simply abandoning their settlements. Ships would arrive, load up people and equipment, then disappear into deep space. But those observers didn't know where the ships were really going. "Any signs of Council surveillance?" Yoon asked. "The Nexari have been sending spy drones, but our countermeasures are working. They see what we want them to see." Han smiled slightly. "Their technology is impressive, but it's old. They haven't updated their scanning methods in over a century. That was the Council's biggest weakness, though. They didn't know it yet. After thousands of years of dominance, they had become comfortable. Their technology was advanced, but it was also predictable. They did things the same way their ancestors had done them, following patterns that never changed. Humans didn't work that way. In just 4 decades of Council membership, human scientists had studied every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. They had learned how Council ships worked, how their weapons functioned, how their sensors operated, but more importantly, they had figured out how to do all of those things better. "What's the status on Dr. Nam's project?" Yoon asked. Han's smile grew wider. "She says the dimensional fold technology is ready for full deployment. The test runs have been perfect." Yoon allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Dr. Nam Yoonji was perhaps the most brilliant scientist humanity had ever produced. While the Council had dismissed her theories about dimensional manipulation as impossible, she had spent 10 years proving them wrong. The dimensional fold technology didn't just allow travel between parallel spaces. It let humans create their own pocket dimensions hidden from normal space entirely. That was where humanity was really going. Not to distant stars or hidden planets, but to dimensions that existed alongside the normal galaxy, but could never be detected by Council sensors. Entire colonies, complete with cities, farms, and factories, were being built in spaces that didn't technically exist. "Show me the latest reports from our field teams," Yoon said. The screens changed to display dozens of locations across Council space. Captain Han's Ghost Fleet had been busy over the past months, using stealth technology that combined human innovation with captured Council designs. They had been watching and listening to everything the aliens did. "The Vorthak are getting nervous," Han reported. "They've increased patrols in sectors near human space. The Ethereals have been asking questions about dimensional anomalies they've detected, but they can't figure out what's causing them." "And the Council leadership?" "Councillor Vexthul has been making speeches about the human problem. He's convinced that we're planning some kind of attack. The other species are starting to listen to him. Yoon wasn't surprised. Vexthul was smart, enough to know that humanity's silence meant something bad for the Council. He just didn't know what. There's something else, Han continued. Our teams have been analyzing Council archives, and we found something interesting. The official records mention 47 species that have voluntarily relocated or chosen isolation over the past 10,000 years. But when we cross-referenced with archaeological data, we found something strange. What kind of strange? All 47 species showed signs of rapid technological development before they disappeared. They were innovating, adapting, creating new technologies that the older Council species couldn't understand. The implications hit Yoon immediately. They weren't relocated. They were eliminated. That's what we think. The Council has been maintaining their power by destroying any species that might challenge them. The Zephyrians and the Kithra weren't the exceptions. They were the survivors. Yoon stared at the screens, feeling a cold anger settle in her chest. For 43 years, humanity had tried to work within the Council system. They had followed the rules, respected the older species, and tried to prove themselves worthy of acceptance. All while the Council was planning to add them to the list of relocated species. What about Dr. Park's research? She asked. That's the most important discovery, Han said, bringing up new files. Her work on human neural adaptability was just the beginning. Our people have been studying alien technology for decades, and we've found something the Council doesn't know. The screen showed brain scans and neural pattern analyses. Human brains looked similar to alien brains in most ways, but there were crucial differences. Where alien species had evolved to be stable and unchanging, human brains were designed for constant adaptation. We can interface with any alien technology intuitively, Han explained. A human can sit down at a Vorthak control console and figure out how to use it in minutes. It takes their own people years of training to do the same thing. We can learn their languages by listening to a few conversations. We can understand their mathematics by looking at their equations. And they know this? Some of them suspect it. That's why they wanted to contain us. They're terrified of a species that can master their technology faster than they can. Yoon thought about this for a moment. In the Council chamber, Vexthul had called humans aggressive parasites. Maybe he was more right than he knew. Humans didn't just use alien technology. They absorbed it, improved it, and made it better. They were like a virus that infected other civilizations and came out stronger. Status report on Admiral Lee's project? She asked. The war fleets are ahead of schedule. We have over 300 dimensional shipyards operating now, all building vessels with hybrid technology. Human engineering, Vorthak energy systems, Nexary computers, ethereal power sources, all combined in ways the original designers never imagined. That was humanity's real advantage. The Council species had spent millennia perfecting their individual technologies, but they rarely worked together. Their ships used pure Vorthak designs or pure Nexary designs. Human ships used the best features from every species, integrated in ways that created something entirely new. How long until we're ready? Yoon asked. Admiral Lee says 6 more months for full deployment, but we could begin operations sooner if necessary. It won't be necessary. Let them search for us. Let them wonder where we went. Fear's a weapon too. Han nodded and prepared to leave, but Yoon stopped him with a gesture. One more thing. I want increased surveillance on the Council's core worlds. If they're planning to do to us what they did to those other 47 species, we need to know about it. You think they'll try to attack Earth directly? I think they're already planning it. Vexthul isn't the type to let a challenge to Council authority go unanswered. When they realize we're not coming back with our tails between our legs, they'll try to make an example of us. After Han left, Yoon stood alone in her office, looking at the star charts on her walls. Somewhere out there, the Council was searching for humanity, growing more desperate with each empty colony they found. They thought they were hunting a retreating enemy. They had no idea they were actually being surrounded. In the dimensional pockets that Dr. Nam had created, human civilization was growing stronger every day. Scientists were making breakthrough discoveries. Engineers were building weapons and ships that surpassed anything in the galaxy. Soldiers were training for a war that the Council didn't even know was coming. But most importantly, humanity was remembering what they had almost forgotten during their decades of trying to fit into the Council's system. They were remembering what it meant to be human, adaptable, innovative, and absolutely relentless when protecting their own. The Council thought they had solved the human problem by driving humanity away. Soon, they would learn the truth. For the problem had never been where humans were. The problem was what humans could become when they were free to be themselves. Captain Kim Dae-hyun stood at the back of the Great Council chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. The massive room stretched out before him like a metal cathedral. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up in circles toward the ceiling. Their voices created a strange music of clicks, hums, and growls as they spoke in their many languages. Kim watched Ambassador Choi Soo-min walk to the center of the chamber. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her dark suit simple compared to the bright robes and strange armor worn by the other delegates. In her hands, she held a small device containing 40 years of human research. The chamber grew quiet as Choi reached the speaking platform. Above her, a massive hologram showed the Andromeda Spiral, a beautiful collection of stars that humans wanted to explore and settle. Dr. Park Min-ji had spent 10 years proving that humans could live in that region. The energy fields there were different from normal space, but human brains could adapt to them in ways that alien minds could not. Honored council members, Choi began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Earth presents our proposal for joint colonization of the Andromeda Spiral. Our research shows that this region holds great promise for all our species. She touched her device and the hologram changed to show scientific data. Charts and graphs filled the air, displaying Dr. Park's discoveries. The human brain, it turned out, was different from alien brains in one important way. Where other species needed hundreds of years to adapt to new environments, humans could do it in just a few generations. Kim had read the reports. He knew what they meant. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were something new, something that could change faster than anyone else. But as he looked around the chamber, he could see that most of the aliens were not interested in the data floating above their heads. In the front row sat the Vorthak delegation. These tall, scaled beings had ruled a third of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their leader, Counselor Vexthul, was not even looking at the human presentation. Instead, he was speaking quietly to his aides, his forked tongue flicking out as he made what sounded like jokes. Behind the Vorthak sat the ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who claimed to be the oldest species in the galaxy. They rarely spoke during council meetings, believing themselves too wise to waste words on younger species. Today was no different. Choi continued her presentation, but Kim could feel the mood in the room. After 43 years of membership, he knew how these meetings went. The council would listen politely, then vote to give the best colonization rights to the older, more established species. Humans would get the leftover systems, if anything at all. The energy fields in the Andromeda Spiral are unique, Choi was saying. Human neural patterns can interface with these fields in ways that create new possibilities for technology and exploration. We believe that joint colonies could benefit all species. This time, Counselor Vexthul did look up, his yellow eyes focused on Choi with something that looked like amusement. Ambassador Choi, he said, his voice like gravel scraping against metal. Your species has been part of this council for barely 4 decades. Do you really think you understand galactic colonization better than species who have been exploring space for millennia? A ripple of laughter went through the chamber. Not loud laughter, but the kind of quiet chuckling that made Kim's jaw clench. It was the sound of adults laughing at a child who thought they could play grown-up games. Choi's face remained calm. We do not claim superior knowledge, Counselor. We simply offer what we have learned through our research. Research, repeated another voice. This came from the Nexari section, where blue-skinned beings with large heads sat in perfect rows. Humans have a talent for making grand claims based on limited data. Perhaps your time would be better spent learning from your betters. More laughter, louder this time. Kim felt his cybernetic arm twitch slightly, the mechanical fingers wanting to curl into a fist. He had lost his original arm in the border wars, fighting to protect human colonies from raiders that the Council had ignored. The replacement was stronger than flesh, but right now he wished it could punch through the force fields that protected the Council chamber. Choi tried again. If the Council would examine our data— We have examined it, Vexthul interrupted, rising to his full height of nearly 3 meters. And we find it interesting. The idea that humans might have some special ability to adapt is amusing. But adaptation without wisdom is dangerous. Your species is young, aggressive, and unpredictable. You fight wars among yourselves. You pollute your own worlds. You create weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The Vorthak counselor began to pace, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. The Council has maintained peace in this galaxy for over 5,000 years. We have done this by ensuring that dangerous species are properly guided. Some species, like the Zephyrians, were given time to mature before being granted full membership. Others, like the Cathera, were relocated to safer regions where they could not harm themselves or others. Kim had heard these stories before. The Zephyrians had been kept as junior members for over 200 years before being allowed to vote. The Cathera had been moved to the galaxy's edge and were rarely seen anymore. There were other species too, ones that had simply vanished from Council records. No one talked about where they had gone. The human proposal is denied, Vexthul announced. Furthermore, this Council believes that humanity would benefit from additional guidance. We recommend that human expansion be limited to your current systems until your species demonstrates greater maturity. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Kim saw Choi's shoulders tense slightly, the only sign that she was affected by what had just been said. Around the chamber, other delegates were nodding in agreement. Some looked genuinely sympathetic, but not enough to speak up. Limited to our current systems? Choi asked quietly. For your own good, Vexthul said, and now his voice carried a tone that made Kim's blood run cold. Aggressive parasites must be contained before they can spread and damage the host. The silence that followed was complete. Even the usual background hum of alien conversations had stopped. Every being in the chamber was looking at the small human woman standing alone in the center of the vast room. Kim watched Choi take a slow breath. When she spoke again, her voice was steady and clear. The Earth delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. Humanity will find its own path among the stars. The silence stretched for another moment, then broke into laughter again. But this time it was different. This was the laughter of beings who thought they had just witnessed something hilariously foolish. Very well, Vexthul said, settling back into his seat. When your species realizes the foolishness of this decision, you may petition for readmission. The Council is generous to those who admit their mistakes. Choi gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. Kim fell into step beside her, along with the rest of the small human delegation. As they left the chamber, alien voices rose behind them, already moving on to other business. In the corridor outside, Dr. Park Minji was waiting. The small woman looked tired, her usually bright eyes dim with disappointment. How did they take it? She asked. About as expected, Choi replied. They see us as children playing with dangerous toys. Kim looked back toward the chamber doors. They have no idea what they just did. No, Choi agreed. They don't. As they walked toward their ship, Kim thought about the data in Dr. Park's research. The aliens were right about one thing. Humans were different. But they were wrong about what that difference meant. In 43 years of Council membership, humanity had been studying, learning, and growing. They had taken alien technology and improved it. They had solved problems that other species couldn't handle. They had adapted to challenges that would have stopped older civilizations. The Council saw this adaptability as a threat. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. Humans weren't dangerous because they were aggressive or unpredictable. They were dangerous because they could become something more than what they were. And now, for the first time in 43 years, they were free to do exactly that. Behind them, The great council chamber continued its business, the aliens comfortable in their ancient power. None of them noticed the small human ship leaving the station. None of them thought to ask where it was going or what humanity might do next. They would learn soon enough.